How's it going, Andrew?
What's going on, Matt?
Not much. Had a good weekend in Green Bay. Took Zoe to like her first baseball game and her first ride on a school bus as we got shuttled over to Kite Fest up there. And what else did we do? We did something else with her that it was her first. Oh, it was her first time staying at a hotel. So
Fun.
Yeah, it was a really busy weekend. We were all pretty worn out by the drive home today. So
And here you are.
Yep. It was good, though. It was good. It was fun to get away for a minute.
So I went to Summerfest yesterday. Bit of a weird exit. We're sitting there, and we suddenly see about 50 people start sprinting by.
Uh-oh.
Like full running. And then we're like, from like the stage to the left of us.
Yeah.
And I looked on the news. I don't see anything yet. But then a lady came up, she's like, you guys got to go. We got to get out of here. And I was like, So then I dipped out, ran outside, hopped on a Lime scooter, and me and my buddy Brendan scooted into the sunset, riding through like traffic and on scoots, snuck down the Harbor District, ran around past the through Walker's Point and all this stuff, and snuck home.
Nice. So you don't even know what happened to cause everybody to be like, we got to get out of here?
So, like, it's hard to tell because when I was leaving, like, there were definitely people who were completely unawares, just, like, enjoying the fest. And then there's, like, was this, like, kids goofing around? Like, but it was, like, 50 or 60 people all running.
Wow.
And, like, there were, like, you know, police on horses just chilling. And, like, I was like, I don't know. It's hard in a festival like this for information to spread either. So it could be, like, completely isolated and no one knows what's going on. So I decided to be prudent and not find out.
Not find out what was going on. Just get out of there.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm just going to get out of here. It's fine.
That is super strange, though. That is just odd.
Yeah, it was weird. So we just dipped.
And part of the reason I never go to Summerfest anymore.
Yeah. You look at violent crimes, and it's always between the age of 16 and 18 is like the main culprit. And Summerfest is like the mecca for 16 and 18-year-olds. You're like, okay, I hope so.
I haven't been to Summerfest in years.
Yeah, I hadn't been for a while either. So we went there short notice because my buddy was visiting, and he lives in Malaysia now. And he very short notice was like, I'm at Summerfest tonight. You should come. I'm like, well, thanks for letting us knowing you're in town from Malaysia.
Right.
So
I'm sure it's in town for more than a day, and all of a sudden, like, boom, I'm at Summerfest.
Yep, so we had to rush down there. And the funny thing is, the buddy that I went with is my opponent today in the hurling match.
Oh, boy.
One of their better players, so I debuffed him. Got him a little hungover so I can have an advantage.
There you go. Well, speaking of the fact that you have a hurling match today, and we have a bunch of other stuff going on, we should probably kick this thing off and get to our topic for today.
Yep, sounds good.
Loosen up your ties and roll up your sleeves. It's time for Fellowship with Matt and Andrew. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are not necessarily the views and opinions of the Grand Lodge of Wisconsin or any other Grand Lodge or any appended body.
All right. So today we're actually here today with like dual motives. We're going to do a podcast quick, but we also have a officers meeting that's being hosted by our senior warden, who, if you hear any clinky clanking in the background, that's him moving some stuff in. He's hosting it to start aligning people and getting information out way in advance for his year next year.
Right.
So I thought it'd be cool to talk about ways that lodges can work to be organized and to really create we always talk about how communication is so important between officers, and how even something like this, and there's other tactics we can talk about too, can really help to make a lodge run smoothly.
Yeah, this is a great idea. I did this last year, but I didn't do it quite this early. I think I did mine in like September.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Sounds about right. We did an officer meeting for the Corps of Officers for the next year to just kind of give them an idea of what my expectations were and all that kind of stuff and go from there. And I think it's a great idea to do because it really lays everything out for people. It allows people to put key dates on their calendar right away and just get the ball rolling. And I think it also offers some continuity from this year to the next year.
Yeah.
Because then everybody's working in sync. We know what our goals for the rest of the year are, and we know what our goals for next year are.
Yep. And you have the current master and the incoming master in the room at the same time, which can help kind of blend those 2 years together so it doesn't feel as staggered. Like, I'm a new guy, I'm here. And you're like, okay. Like, it can help kind of blend those two so that they can be kind of a seamless transition.
Right. It definitely allows for the concept of, kind of a smooth, easy transition of power, if you want to say. and planning. And, you know, there's going to be differences between everybody that sits in the East, so it affords the ability, you know, everybody knew what my expectations were going into this year, and now they're going to get to know what Jeff's expectations are going into next year. And hopefully, you know, if somebody needs to work on some stuff between now and then, that gives them the opportunity to shore up the things they need to get ready to do next year.
And it's great for setting, you know, I'd say one thing any lodge officer who's either in the senior warden or the master position should be minimum you're scheduling an officers meeting once you're installed. That right. I think is a just a basic requirement. You should do that no matter what. But I don't think there's anything wrong with doing a mid-year check-in too.
No, I think it's a great idea actually, and I'm gonna kind of steal a few minutes from Jeff today to kind of ask the guys how they've been feeling about this year, what they've liked, what they haven't liked, and, you know, with 6 months essentially left or a little bit less than, what I could be doing better for the remainder of the year to help things continue moving in the right direction. And I honestly, I think having officer meetings more often would even be a good thing. Like maybe like quarterly at least.
Yep, because you could easily come in and say, all right, how did the first 3 months go? And here's what we have coming up the next one. This is the type of help we need. This is how, like, you know, you can really level set everyone. Quarterly would be great. I think doing twice a year would also be perfect. Like anytime you're doing extra communication to make sure your team is all on the same page, it avoids that confusion you get where sometimes you'll notice an officer might seem like they're not quite in the loop. And, you know, if that's the case, it's usually a communication issue from the top down.
Right. And I feel like we have really strong communication among the officers already with our text messaging group and with our Discord and stuff like that. I think we really do communicate with each other well as to what's going on and stuff like that. And so maybe that was part of the reason I didn't see it as necessary to go to like a quarterly officer meeting system, because we're all talking a couple times a week, whether it be on text message or Discord or, you know, whatever, plus the email I've been sending out weekly to the entire lodge that doubles as communication with the officers as well. So I feel like we're really solid when it comes to our communication, but sometimes there's that face-to-face stuff where you can get different stuff out. So I think quarterly would probably be at a minimum would be the right place to go.
Yeah, especially if you're a lodge thinking about trying to get more organized. You can always start with more meetings and reduce down if you feel they're unnecessary. But it's nice to always think like, let's get together and let's talk and make sure that everyone knows exactly what's going on.
Right.
And what your expectations are. That's a huge thing when it comes to leadership, is making sure that you communicate expectations. So someone could be like, I didn't know that was my job. And you're like, well, you got to make sure everyone knows exactly what their job is. And so it can be helpful to just align, because one leader to another, they might expect different things from their subordinates. So you want to make sure that you know exactly what your leader's expectations are.
Right. Well, and it could be a check in the opposite direction too, where you could definitely think about it from the aspect of somebody who hasn't necessarily been in like full-on leadership role before, like they haven't been the head of an organization and now they're sitting in the East. That would give them the opportunity to be like, all right, what do you guys hate that I'm doing, and what do you guys love that I'm doing, and what can I do better for you guys?
What do you need from
me? Right.
Yep.
What do you need from me? Where are we going? Like, what can I do to help you guys? What am I missing?
Yep.
You know?
And it's important to be, as a leader, receptive to that feedback and not butthurt by it. You know what I mean? Like, you got to find a balance to say, if you ask them, you need to be prepared to receive that feedback humbly and try to actually integrate it, not just be like, well, you know what, I just thought you guys would say you love me. How dare you talk bad?
Right. If you ask the question, you have to be ready to accept the answers you get. And that's critical. If you really don't want to know what the answers are, don't ask the question.
Yep.
Because if you're going to take it personally when somebody tells you where they feel like you're screwing up, that defeats the entire purpose of asking the question.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think are a couple of things that you've done in your year, and I already know it's a handful because I lived through it, to improve your officers' communication and to improve on, you know, trying to shore up the officers' line as a whole?
I think group text message, which has been going on for years now, is just a very valid form of communication. I feel like I like to try to touch base with everybody every time I see them in person, at least, and ask them how things are going and, chat with them there. We talk about officer meetings and stuff like that, and it's sometimes I look at like our lodge in particular, and like maybe for a slightly less active lodge, officer meetings would be of big importance, right? But we're here almost every Thursday. We see everyone almost every Thursday. So it's almost like we're having ad hoc officer meetings before or after the degree or before or after the stated meeting, because I really feel like those lines of communication especially open up when we stop out after the meeting.
Yep.
And, I get to hear things and understand what's going on better,
I do think the officers meeting can also be a nice level set. Like, not everyone likes to go out or is unable to go out after meetings, so it's nice to set a separate date to be like, we're all getting together, even like those who maybe they have, they need to get home for childcare and stuff like that can't quite make the extracurricular time, that you set an alternative date so that they can get looped into. So.
Yeah, and I would agree, and I feel like we get some of it beforehand. Everybody usually gets here fairly early when we have something going on, so I feel like I've had a good chance to talk to everybody pretty much before any event we've had going on and kind of get a beat of where everybody's at. I think that weekly email, even if like people don't necessarily respond, I think that's been massive for officer communication and communication to the lodge in general. I think that's really helpful with everything we have going on, to be giving people a weekly reminder of this is what we have coming up.
Yep. And just a quick blurb about what's been going on, or if anything, it's like a quick news, because it's kind of like the updated version of our mail templegram, where the templegram we get once a month, and it goes dark in the summer, and like you have to wait the whole month to get tuned in, and then you have to remember everything on that list going into the next month. Whereas with the weekly email, for those who are tech savvy enough to enjoy reading emails, it gives them a weekly, like, oh, yep, here's a reminder. That's what's been going on. Like a quick news blurb. I mean, you look at any like company, like at my work, I get a Monday email that comes out like, this is who's here, this who's not here, here's the plan for this week, here's the big events. Like that's pretty standard proto when you're in an organization that needs to communicate effectively.
Right. And, I would say one of the biggest hurdles to communicating effectively especially via email, because like a lot of times if it's going to be like a large group of people, like, if I'm trying to put together a degree team, or if it's about a big event, like obviously I'm not going to like try to text like 30 people at once, right? Or even 20 people at once. So the email is critical to be used for like setting up a degree team or communicating stuff like that. Or, if somebody's opted not to be in the officer text message chat, this way they can still get the email. One of the biggest hurdles I've found with that is people not checking their emails.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Yeah.
If you're an officer, I'm just going to say right now, if you accept a role as an officer, you need to accept the ability to check emails, because like we're saying, communication is so important, but you shouldn't just expect people to track you down, to talk to you, to tell you something. You have to be well enough to open to at least getting communicated to. Otherwise, I mean, there's so many examples I have of that, where you have a certain officer where you have to be like, dude, you have to start making regular checking of your emails part of your lifestyle if you're going to sit in this position, because you need to be able to be communicated to effectively as well.
Yep. I've had that conversation with a few people, because it's like, I can communicate to you as much as I want, but if you don't receive said communication, it doesn't matter. And I'm not going to text 5 different people to say, hey, remember to check your email because I just sent you an email. Like
a secondary text. Oh my God. I had a brother ask me once, he's like, hey, I'm really bad at email. Can you just text me when the event is after you email me and I can go in there and check it? And I was like, no, I can't do that. It's too...
We talk about masonry being about self-improvement sometimes, right? Well, there's a key opportunity to do something that is, improving yourself, and that's to put yourself on the hook for being responsible for checking your email.
Yeah, which is just being responsible for being accessible so that you can actually help and be informed. Right. Yeah, and otherwise, it's challenging. There's so much challenging parts of being in a multi-generational volunteer organization where, like, if you're trying to do intergroup stuff and stuff like that, you'll find the emails can be a challenge where, like, 5 of the people will be like, yep, I'm right there. And then, like, the other 5 you have to call on the phone and be like, are you doing something? And then they're like, oh, I don't check my email ever, sorry. Right. I check it every 6 months. You're like, what?
And if you look at it from beyond a lodge level even, a lot of the Grand Lodge communications come via email. Your district communications come via email. I'm communicating with 200 members of our lodge every week via email. Like, email allows you to have a larger reach, right? It's easier to have a large reach that way and to touch and get that information to a lot of people at once. And that's why I prefer it for certain things. And honestly, you got to check your email.
Yep.
If you tell me I didn't know an event was going on and I had it in the weekly mailer for 6 weeks in a row and it was on social media and it was in the Templegram and everything else, guess whose fault it is that you didn't know the event was going on? Because it ain't mine.
It's yours. I can answer that question. But yeah, so we basically, when thinking about how to try to create a strong officers line as far as organizationally speaking, there's always going to be personalities, but that's going to be part of your selection process when you're selecting candidates to go into those positions. But when speaking about organization, then the things we're basically saying is you need to find time to do officers meetings minimum once a year, but you can do more, and it can be actually very helpful depending on the needs of your lodge, that you need to be willing to open up lines of communication that are outside of those meetings as well, so that you don't have to wait 6 months to have a conversation, and that can be via text message or email, but they should be something that the leadership is thinking about keeping up with enough to give real-time updates so that people can have actionable decisions made upon them.
Yep.
What other advice can we give?
Well, I think one of the key points that we're touching on is to tell, especially if we're talking about organizational planning from just purely the officer line, make it clear to people that they are responsible to check for communications via any of these 3 forms that we use to communicate things to you. Like, that is your responsibility. Whoever's sending out the communication is not somebody's babysitter to make sure they get the communication. It's your responsibility to look for the communication.
And your job as an officer is to take work off of people's plates by doing your work. So if you're adding steps to an already busy person's day just to make you do what it should be your job, then you're not doing it correctly. And you should be trying to find ways to be like, dude, take initiative. Make sure you're communicating. I mean, if I had a nickel for every time, if I didn't communicate in a timely enough manner to my subordinates, that they're texting me and being like, dude, what's the deal with this plan? You're like, sorry, I got left behind. We're doing this, and this. Take initiative to make sure that you're being communicated with too, and hold your leaders accountable. I don't mind when people hold me accountable. I mean, stuff gets away from people sometimes. It's hard working in a volunteer organization. We all have lives. We all have jobs, hobbies. So it'll get away from you, but don't be afraid to hold your leadership or the people that are in charge of you also accountable, because when that happens to me, I don't get mad. I go, it's crap.
Well, I've been held accountable a couple of times where I forgot to send out a communication about something and somebody checked on it. There's also been times where I thought I was getting held accountable on something because I received a text message being like, hey, is this still going on? And I'm like, yeah, I literally sent an email about it yesterday, still going on, which is okay, that goes back to that thing. If you stay up on the different forms of communication, then you wouldn't have asked that question, right? You wouldn't have asked that question, you would have just already have seen the communication. So it's frustrating sometimes. I'm not trying to sound frustrated, but it's frustrating sometimes when you do everything in your power to communicate things and then people still ask about it like you didn't communicate it.
Yep. So, I mean, basically, I guess to get to the gist of what we've been trying to say today is make sure you're staying organized by communicating effectively. Make sure you're willing to receive the communications, the word and the coming to you. Make sure that you're aligning people on expectations and doing regular meetings to make sure that you're getting proper feedback and giving feedback. And I don't know what else to talk about on this topic. I feel like we kind of fleshed it out.
I'm just going to say, remember that there's a lesson about an attentive ear, which means all forms of communication in today's day and age.
Yep.
So I think that's going to be it for this week. Nice little short one for our listeners. And we have a couple of cool things coming up. Sounds like we're going to be guests on another podcast. So you'll be hearing more about that as we approach that.
And as we speak about officers, I do want to plug that I think in the near future we are going to start doing some episodes on the officers' chairs.
Yes.
While we're thinking about that kind of topic, which we've talked about a lot on this podcast as well, about roles and responsibilities of practical masonry, meaning stuff we're doing in our lodges. So I think that'd be cool. So we'll start breaking those out and give you guys more info on some officer information.
I think we could basically do it as a 2, 2, 2, and 1. if we're just touching on the progressive line, handle the stewards, and handle the deacons, and handle the wardens, then handle the...
I want to do the musician and counselor, too.
Okay, they can be an episode as well. Secretary and treasurer could be an episode, too.
Yeah, we can do them all. Why stop? I mean,
Right, no, I'm willing to do them all. It's a good way to break that up. So.
Yep, we could do 357. No, I'm just kidding.
I think we should have a secretary on when we do the secretary episode.
We should have both the secretary and the treasurer and the musician and the counselor explaining their role. Actually, sounds good to me.
Yeah. All right. Perfect.
Cool.
So, all right. Well, everybody have a great day. Thanks for listening. And I look forward to some new and exciting stuff coming up.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye.